All right. All right. All right. All right. Let's roll with it, baby. That's probably a good Memorial Day song, fam. I know you're out there in Moscow. You're probably not thinking about sunny Florida beaches and Memorial Day songs and food and whatnot. And I think we're not either, because we're here for a lot of our fams, the people who are still going to be, have to go to work or whatever, wherever they listen to on us on a Monday. We're still here for them, fam. So welcome to the show. It's Monday, Memorial Day, fam.
Yeah. What's up, everybody? Definitely not celebrating here. Russia had May 9th, so that was that. And it's a lot bigger for Russia. Actually, I was talking to someone today saying how significant it is. There's not a single person alive today whose family wasn't affected by that. So that shows you how significant it was compared to, I think, us in the U.S. where Memorial Day is like, everybody's at the beach drinking, that sort of thing. Very, very different. But needless to say, there's so much to discuss. The reason why we did a show was because Friday we weren't able to do one. We had to reschedule a couple things, and we really want to bring you the latest on what's happening, things that we haven't talked about. And there's been a lot of things going on online, a lot of like rumblings and stirrings. As I did a podcast with Vanessa in which she, it wasn't even in the podcast, it was there afterwards. She talked about China's role in Yemen and in other aspects. So I want to touch base on that a little bit from a psychological perspective as well. So
how's your internet connection? Is it yours, Jayme? Whose internet connections is fuzzy? How are we looking out there? Yeah, because I just checked my internet connection and it's pretty damn good. So like a lot of that, you were choppy coming in and out. We should have stopped you.
Am I still choppy? Because I can come back in.
You're not as choppy. You're a little coming in. I think you're good now. I'm looking at the feed that's a little bit behind on YouTube, and we look okay. But in the beginning, you were a little bit choppy. So
okay.
But we're good now. We're good. We're here, right? We're doing the thing. We're doing it live. Yeah, fam.
No, go. I mean, go ahead. I mean, I just said a bunch of things, so go ahead.
Well, you said we're going to keep people up to date on a lot of things and give them the perspective of what's going on. Really, to tell you the truth, before we got started, we were in the green room. Do you want to give a quick comment? I know before we get started in the first thing when I talk about Trump and what's going on with I don't know, fam, because I have an interesting truther question. I feels like it's part of a bigger plan too as well, with Trump going after the South African president. I don't know if it fulfills multiple agendas, definitely. I think it's a backlash of, once again, and this should backfire on Donald Trump. A lot of people should be like, you're going after this guy when you got what's going on in Gaza. But before we do get to that, Jayme had said that Donald Trump was pissed at Vladimir Putin. Do you know anything about that? Have you heard anything about that in perspective of the last several days? Still, there's no ceasefire. There's no deal, right?
No.
They're still fighting on the battlefield. That is not going to stop. I know that angers a lot of people from the West because they really thought, or they're playing the part of they thought that, they can get a ceasefire unconditionally. It's not going to work.
Yeah, there's just a couple things. One major update is that Putin emphasized that if McDonald's wants to come back to Russia, they're not going to be able to. Russia's already, they don't need them. So that's pretty funny. The other thing is that Peskov said that in order for the prisoner exchange to continue, it totally depends on the negotiations that will happen. So it seems like Russia isn't being as, I would say, as forgiving as they were before when it comes to believing in the U.S. And today I actually had a conversation with somebody about how they really genuinely don't buy anything coming from the U.S. But I mean, this is like a rarity that, the U.S. is never going to stop. This is coming from a Russian person, that they're going to continue. But that hasn't been what I've been hearing from most. So it was actually very interesting and in a way good to hear that awareness that the U.S. isn't going to stop one way or another. They're going to continue until this is a full-fledged war, is what they said. And so I think, unfortunately, when we look at the future, I think that's where we're headed in many ways. So we'll see what happens, even if there is some sort of,
When you say
whatever,
we're
a
headed that
negotiation.
way, what do you mean that way?
I mean, towards a global war, because I don't see the West stopping their buildup against Russia, whether it's in Finland or Poland. They're still continuing that there. Even if we get like a negotiation now, I don't see them like stopping down the line, and I see them picking back up down the line. So I'm with this person. Like, I don't think we're gonna see an end until this is like a full-on thing, unless of course the US intelligence apparatus goes within Russia and tries to capture and defang Russia via some sort of intel operation. And I'm hearing things about that happening in China. There's going to be attempts to do that. Right now what we're looking at is they're going to try whatever they can, because we know that the world power has shifted, right? We know that. I'm not saying that it's equal, but I am saying like there's now more competition. And so like this is something that the West has to face. And even JD Vance kind of said it out loud in his speech that he recently gave. He really, like, they're admitting that this has shifted. How they act on that is something else, right?
Well, the thing is, I think when he talks about admits about shifting, then that kind of manufactures consent for more of the same type of foreign policy, thuggish foreign policy.
Yeah.
You do what we want to do, otherwise we sanction you. Continue to build. What do you no, when you're not building bridges? What are you doing? Building dams, putting up barriers, building walls. Hey, he wants to build a wall. Yeah, also in his foreign policy, not just on the southern border, because that's how he's acting. And if we're looking at this whole thing as kabuki theater, the script is playing out to me as if like Donald Trump thinks he's savvy enough and can push enough to say, come on, Vladimir, I want to do business with you in Russia. There's business we want to do too. And the script plays to me that Vladimir Putin and, Sergei Lavrov and the rest of the crew in the Russian Federation are saying, no, we've played this game so many times with you before. From, me, myself, Vladimir Putin telling George W. Bush that there are Chechens being funded by intelligence apparatuses after we've already made friends, we went fishing, and you're not going to do anything about it. In other words, even though you're going to act as a president like you're extending an olive branch, and now Trump is trying to do the same things. Come on, Vladdy, let's do some vodka together. Let's play some hockey. Let's hit the ice together, whatever the case, right? That he wants to do business. They know they're going to constantly be poking, prying until they get what they want. At the end of the day, they want regime change and they want balkanization of Russia. They got a little taste of it before. Boris Yeltsin and the Clintons walking around Moscow with the mink coats, right? I don't know if they wore a mink coat. I remember them wearing something warm and being all fun and friendly, but they got a little taste of that, right? That's like the market price fatty toro on the sushi menu. You don't want to eat that regular ahi red tuna as much, you know what I'm saying? The stuff they use in the poke bowls. I mean, that's regular. You want that toro. And at the end of the day, they're going to always push, pry, go after Russia, try to balkanize, try to stir up the you-know-what. And, Vladimir Putin has said in this narrative, fam, that he wants to talk about the root cause of this war. The Americans are never going to do that, fam. Donald Trump's walking around acting like he's still a third party unite. What are you talking about? It wasn't my war. Come on, I'm USA now. Who cares if America was a proxy war? Forget about that. No, this is not. There will be no solution to this. There'll just be a new world going through moving forward. That's what I have to say about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we got to adapt the analysis to the times and the theories to the times of today, because now we're dealing with AI. We're dealing with a technological overtaking, essentially, coming in and playing vital roles in everywhere. And that technology is here. It's in Russia. It's in China. It's in the US. And that's another layer of things that we're dealing with, by the way. So,
see, fam, I don't know if there was prequels made to the Matrix, right? About when the Matrix starts, it's like you're in the machines are over and stuff. No, but there might have been cartoons. I'm saying like that have been
there
made.
probably will be.
Yeah, No, I think there was like cartoons about the Nebuchadnezzar,
Maybe.
which was one of the vessels that went down, and I think they probably already made like so many cartoons. But this is the point in which the humans are using the AI as a weapon to, you know what I'm saying, to infringe on everybody's privacies and to spy. This is where they're using it for bad, and they're gonna get greedy using it until the point where the machine takes over it. But this is the beginning stages of that, and that's how they're using AI. And if Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, any Democrat, Michelle Obama were the president, and on day 2 introduced Sam Altman and Keith Ellison and what they're about with Starlink to Stargate, every Republican that was against the I almost called him Charles Schwab. You know what I'm saying? Schwab and the Economic World Forum and all those things. If anybody had plugged into a guy who wants to have AI mRNA vaccines catered to your DNA, they would have flipped their lid. But Donald Trump could do it. And this is why they picked him, because they already test them out in WWE. They are pandering to the lowest informed voter out there, the base, reactionary, that will buy the immigration issue as the worst issue in the world, right? You know what I'm saying? All the BS. But it's fascinating, and I think we need to talk about it. We should transition into this first story. What do you think, fam? Because I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions, because I know you're probably it's white noise when you hear Donald Trump do something stupid every single day. Okay, so let's play what happened about a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, when Donald Trump was asked in a press conference. This is why fam, I really wish they would give the TruthWire press credentials to go to DC to get into these press rooms and to film these things.
You just have to fill it out.
I filed for it. Never heard anything back, fam. But
oh, you filed for it? Okay, I didn't know you filed for it. Okay.
Yeah, I filed to get in there to get press credentials to the correspondence room and all that stuff. And nope, nothing heard back. And I've sent off our videos and everything we've done, and when we went on tour and everything, I was be like, Johnny, grab the mics. We're going into DC. But this is why you got to be there. This was a couple weeks ago. Donald Trump had been asked a question in a press room and in a press gaggle of sorts. I think it was wherever. But yeah, he just this will set the table when he was asked about South African farmers. Now, we've heard this story before about South African farmers. I think we have to do some due diligence on it. I intend to hit up Ahmed Cabello to hear his side of the story, of course, because I'm sure he's going to provide some context. But, fam, this is kind of like when people talk about Russia. Now here they talk about South Africa. To me, I pay more attention to what? The response from people on Twitter, the response from the right-wing fake media, the right-wing establishment media. I pay attention to all that. I want to get a sense of how people are feeling. And the reason why I have to pay attention to mainstream media is because that's where a lot of people that are around me, that's where they get their opinions from, their confirmation bias. Let's set the table. This is a couple weeks ago, Donald Trump talking about what happened. And then we had the South African president arrive 2 weeks later, and all craziness broke loose. Jayme, play the first video. Here we go. This is a couple weeks ago. This is from DC Drano, fam, your favorite right-wing independent news source out there.
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something, but we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of. But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they talk about it. That would be the only story they talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people to escape from that violence and come here because they're being.
So, fam, notice right off the bat too the same type of foreign policy behavior. It's a little bit Trumpized, like the whole mentality that the populist right has been sold is that too much of our leadership, especially the Democrats, and it's the same thing. They did the same thing in the 80s and the 90s when they do this. Democrats are weak on foreign policy. On foreign policy, you have to have your chest puffed up and let them know right away. I don't know if we can have a G20 summit meeting if they don't have that straightened out, fam. You know, I mean, the same thing the Democrats did when they pulled the All-Star game from Atlanta because Atlanta's legislation made election rules and they moved it to Colorado. They took it out of a poor place, moved it to more an affluent place. You want to mention that? That's kind of very snobbish. But the same type of behavior, Donald Trump threatening that we're going to not have the G20 meeting over there until you get this handled. You know what I'm saying? And then him just taking that on and speaking about, like, you know, this is an atrocity, you know, right here. We know that South Africa has brought against a case for genocide against Israel in the ICJ. And this is right away. I mean, for me in the room, I would have followed up. So you're doing this because you want to protect Israel. You're speaking out for Israel. Now, once again, you're speaking out for Israel. And I think he's doing this thinking that the people will take the emotional white farmers getting killed by black people in Africa bait rather than look into this. And this is more about Israel. What do you think about this? What do you see when you see this, fam? This is 2 weeks ago before the South African president came, because then we have to talk about the procedures in which Donald Trump did this. Go ahead, fam.
Well, I mean, so obviously people are going to get emotional because he's talking about a genocide and he has not called what's happening in Gaza a genocide and what's been happening for however long, like 18 months that it's been ongoing. And we're seeing, I saw today a photo of a little girl literally getting burned alive. And we're constantly seeing this, and we're constantly getting people shouting, hey, this is a genocide. This is a genocide. And he's clearly using the word genocide for a small number of people that, as of now, I haven't seen evidence of this fully happening for it to be called a genocide and not being isolated incidents. I haven't even seen actual evidence of this happening except in selected incidents where it's like a territorial dispute because a lot of these white farmers, you know, this is quote unquote their land that they took from the African farmers that were there before. So you could call that a territorial dispute. You could call it whatever you want to call it, but to call it genocide while there's an ongoing genocide, it serves the purpose of really fueling, infuriating a lot of people that are talking about Palestine while you're imprisoning people on that end. And then the other part, because this has many layers, is the welcoming of refugees from South Africa while calling and vilifying everybody coming in from south of the equator, you know, terrorists, gangsters, rapists, all this other stuff. So that's going to also cause an emotional reaction to all of that. And so not only I agree with you on the Israel issue, because South Africa was the one to stand up against Israel, and Netanyahu specifically, but I also think this is just more red meat to his following, to his supporters who are completely entirely convinced that there's a war against white people, that they literally say this all the time, all over and in the US and social media. I don't think it's reflective of the reality of regular people on the ground. But I think when you look at social media, you'll see a lot of this, like with all the stuff going on in the EU, with all the migrants and all of that, that narrative has taken hold. And so for us, it makes it difficult because we're talking about, yes, there are issues with migration and there are purposeful manipulations being done with immigration. But is it really about the migrant, or is it about who's doing this and the reasons why they're doing it? So we also have to look at the reasons why Donald Trump is heavily focusing on this issue that is a minimal issue that affects a tiny percentage, and how all of his paid shills are literally on social media talking about this excessively, making it about a war against white people, a war against, like protect your children, your wives, have white babies. It becomes like this thing. So then the liberals come in and they're like, oh, Donald Trump's a racist or this and that, missing the points that are really, really deep in there, that are more foreign policy related, more about bombs and the military industrial complex than they actually are. They're utilizing the racial divide. They're utilizing the immigrant issue to promote more of this. So this is a 2-for-1 here that they've done. And it's fascinating really to see it from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is serving more than one agenda, right? Like this is Donald Trump serving his Miriam Adelson money, objectives, right? He can check it off the list. Oh yeah, you know what I'm saying? And he didn't do anything, and he let this slide. Elon Musk supposedly shared a lot of this stuff with him, or shared it on Twitter, and that's where he was able to see the stuff. Once again, Elon Musk. But the thing about it is, and I hate to say it, very much different than what's going on in Israel. Israel, in Gaza, we understand every little bit what's going on. We understand the history of what's going on. It's been talked about. It's been debated. It's open. He's pretty much throwing this out there without a lot of facts. I mean, you said something that, this, once again, this could be black farmers who were trying to take back land that was taken from them before their apartheid ended. You know what I'm saying? And there's deep things about this. We don't know the fact. But it does lend credence, going back to the serving multiple agendas, when he did offer amnesty for white farmers to come to, America, when we have this whole crazy genocide taking place. Before we get into it, because I think that there's a lot to talk about, because the media has a big role to play, fam. The media has a huge role to play, because now the South African president comes, and Jayme, we're not going to play this whole video because it's 13 minutes. I just want people to pay attention to the first couple of minutes of it, but just the way the surprise, like, it's a diplomatic meeting, right? South Africa and the United States still have ties, but now South Africa's in BRICS. You would think on that continent, after the West is starting to lose any influence there, France got thrown out of Burkina Faso. We understand what's going on with that region. Those people taking sovereignty, you would think that this would be like, okay, what are we going to talk about? Or if he's going to address this the way he said, that, South Africa's coming, you think they would do it like in a closed door meeting, right? Fam, this was in front of the press. They had all the press in the friggin' room watching this. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump's like, all right, I want to talk to you about this. Lower the lights. Let's go. Watch the South African president's face, guys. And then we're going to get to part two. We'll stop it at one part, but let's roll into the beginning of this, fam. On a procedure level, I mean, I know, like I say, I sit there and I say everything we're seeing is kabuki theater, but I just want to hear your differences and your thoughts, the way this was done out in front of the public and the press, right? As opposed to something that might back in the days been in closed doors. If you want to talk about real diplomacy happening. Go ahead, Jayme. Let's roll the tempo here. This is TruthWire, guys. All the links down below to help independent media are there. And this is Donald Trump. Watch the South African president just look at what?
Turn the lights down. Turn the lights down, and just put this on. It's right behind you. Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are. Yes, honorable members, must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Choose to kill. Come on, sir.
If you can forward to the point where you see Donald Trump now kind of talk about, just forward a little bit and see, or watch it at a higher speed. Look at the South African president. He's not even looking at the screen. His face is just like, because the screen is to his right. He has to like kind of lean over and look. He's not even looking at that screen, and Donald Trump is just looking at it right now. I mean, this exchange is just fascinating for him. This is the leader of South Africa. This is the president. And he just comes into this room, and all of a sudden they start playing his video. The part I want to get to is right here. Watch this.
These are burial sites right here.
Burial sites.
Over 1,000 of white farmers, and those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning. Each one of those white things you see is a cross, and there's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. And those cars aren't driving, they're stopped there to pay respects to their family member who's killed. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it.
Let's pause. All right. That's enough of that. I've never seen anything like it. Now, what should have happened, you can get out of this screen, is that South African president, excuse me, Mr. President, you didn't see anything like this? Can we keep the lights dim? Can we pull up what's going on in Gaza? Let me show you, Mr. President, not what are you only condoning, right? But you're funding it. You're paying for it. Your tax dollars. Let's show him Gaza there for a second. Got up and walked out. Really?
Yeah.
But he didn't make a thing about it. You could see, fam, he was looking straight. He wasn't even looking at it. And he recognized probably who that was saying. And he'd be like, what are you talking about? This isn't like this isn't official South African policy to kill white farmers, right? And have them driven off their lands. You're bringing up a radical, I don't even say radical, but another person of a parliament who's, fighting as a politician. I don't even know if he holds seat in office. They just said a politician and stuff, right? And then to see, fam, I'm going to let you at it, the right-wing media just praised Donald Trump for this. It almost feels like this, once again, is a PSYOP, a coordinated effort. I mean, I know people are using the word PSYOP nowadays. I'm really happy you guys are using PSYOP. We're leftists who used it before it was cool, right? Back in the days. But it does seem like a psychological mind operation, you know what I'm saying? To pit people against each other and to say this is okay. And we don't have the facts. Taking this American point of view in this situation, fam, can only lead to more trouble. Your thoughts?
So President Ramaphosa seems a little bit like dumbfounded. He's a little bit like, what's going on? Why is this being shown to me? I think he just didn't react on that. And he's he's a president, so he's going to be more diplomatic than any of us, I think, would be. But I mean, this is just beyond insulting on so many levels that we talked about. The refugee level, another thing, the Israeli genocide completely being in the back burner, not talked about, the giant elephant in the room. It's just not talked about whatsoever. And then you have, of course, the inability of armed resistance, the understanding of armed resistance. This is what we're going to talk about in a minute. Because what that politician was talking about was that these people who live in these lands or who were ousted from these lands have a duty to basically take them back, because he's talking about apartheid. And we talk about South Africa's apartheid. It was supported by the Soviet Union. It was supported by China. It was supported pretty much by anybody standing against empire at that time. And it was a case of apartheid. It was an actual case of, look what's happening, look how these people are being treated. So from that context, he's talking about, okay, yes, if we're going to be fighting for our lives and we're going to be fighting for our land, and kind of like how the Palestinians have a right to return, he's talking about that perspective. It may not be popular with many people. People may think it's too radical or off-putting or whatever, but it is his right to talk about it. It's a country in a continent that we have zero claim to, by the way. Why is it that just every other thing that they can make it about, either communism or socialism or anti-white stuff. The conservatives are all over it. Remember Brazil? Yeah, that was a thing, right? All the fake videos that were being shown about the election, all the stuff. Oh, this guy, he didn't really win. They rigged it. No, they didn't. And so, but it becomes about the main issue ideology wise. Why do we have a say on anything that goes on in Brazil or anything that goes on in South Africa? When we don't care to have a say when there's an actual genocide? It just doesn't make sense. We cherry pick. And if that, breaks their heart, then why can't they answer the question as to why the mass murder of just hundreds of thousands of people now, directly and indirectly, doesn't bother them? And again, Trump should be sitting with Netanyahu and showing Netanyahu a video of everything they have done. If Trump did that, are you kidding me? I would sit there and give him accolade upon accolade. I would say, wow, Trump, look what you're doing. You're exposing Netanyahu to his crimes. You're showing the world what the world needs to see, the truth that a lot of people don't want to see. That would be commendable. What he's doing here is PR. You can call it a psyop, but at the very, very least, it's PR for his agenda, for his supporters that are, by the way, waning. His supporters are waning because the support to Israel is still there. Well, all these people who, by the way, haven't said, oh, sorry, I was wrong, I apologize. Trump and Israel aren't really fighting. While all of that's been happening, they've been killing Palestinians endlessly. Lebanon has been bombed in the south. I mean, this is just continuing, and we're having now normal relationships with Al-Qaeda head choppers. So, I mean, it's just, there's so many layers to this pasta, and it's just, I think it's enraging to me, but I think it's even more enraging to people who are like, I don't know, maybe, in West Asia right now, or people who are being held without any sort of due process in illegal foreign prisons, while Trump is, trying to protect these white farmers. And them being white isn't the issue. It's the fact that they're using this purposely because they know it ignites a certain response. That's what really does it for me.
And to see the reaction too, as well, from some of the, from some of the Trumpers out there, right? The people who follow him, the media, obviously too, as well, forcing the South white African. Let's just do this. So for instance, if you just go and you put in, Trump, South Africa, right? And you start looking at it on, Twitter. So I'm going to just add this really quickly to the stage. You can see some of the reaction. Forcing the South African president to watch South African call for white genocide is incredible diplomacy. Like, there's people just buying into this shit. Other administrations would have just had a standard meeting and press conference. Trump is actually trying to save lives. And that's from Tim Young. He's the CEO at Heritage and stuff. He's got 1.1 million followers. Every mainstream media outlet is claiming Trump's claim of white genocide in South Africa is baseless. Here's a clip of Julius Malema, a member of the South African government, saying, kill the Boer, a.k.a. white people. You don't hate the media enough. In other words, they're also stating that, once again, that this is definitely trying to prove that it's true. And here's a black conservative Donald Trump person, right? Fam, you got to watch this. But seeing the reaction from people out there is crazy. Watch this.
My president is a gangster. Oh, my God. Trump bought receipts, bro. Did y'all see that press conference today with South African President Ramaphosa?
Receipts.
Bro, the Trump doctrine. Hell, we're not going to talk nice. We're going to bring receipts, and we're going to keep it real. When they questioned the president, was there any genocide going on in South Africa? He said, you know what? I'm going to let the South African president answer that question. And after the South African president said all that bullshit, Trump said, check this out. I got some receipts. Yo, dim the lights. Turn off the lights, and play the video. Boy, they sat there for about 3.5 minutes watching hateful videos about killing white South Africa. And the South African president had to sit there and listen to it. Boy, that's what I'm talking about. Forget all this rhetoric. If y'all ain't learned about Trump and the new doctrine, it's not about being nice. It's about keeping it real. And baby, he brought some receipts. Them videos talking about unaliving white people, pew pew to unalive white folk. Man, that'll look too good. And it looks so uncomfortable. And after he made him watch that video, he said, okay, now explain. And boy, did he look, oh my God, he couldn't say nothing. Again, I made a video about the things that's been happening in South Africa. And the thing that keeps killing me is every other sentence the president of South Africa talked about Nelson Mandela. Trump knew.
I had enough of it. But fam, I mean, that is an overall arching mentality of a lot of people who, the way they viewed this whole situation. Trump is a no type of bullshit guy, right? And that's how our foreign policy is now. They really convinced people that we need to be more of a bully, that we haven't been bully enough. I mean, we've been going around. We got 1,000 bases everywhere, starting wars, selling weapons to people, bombs dropping left and right. And the antidote is we got to be more stand up and bullyish and stuff like that. I mean, how many white patriot voters, fam, do you think even knew about this story before it happened? We're not patriot voters all together. I don't want to say white, all together. How many people knew about this story? And now they're like, oh, look at that. How dare South Africa do what they do? Go ahead, fam.
Just to finish this up, fam, this just goes back to the fact that this isn't even really truly about race. It's about them using race to fuel this discussion. And it really is about affecting actually his supporters, who are mostly white, into anger and into feeling like justified or vindicated because they feel already that there is a war against them. So what this really reflects is the US mentality and where we're at. We really value characters like Donald Trump. There's a reason he's president. Sure, he was chosen, but really look at everybody that's been president the last few years. All narcissists, all egotistical type of people, characters, right? We're talking about this bullying kind of attitude that's very popular right now. And that kind of attitude where you just do things for the sensationalist aspect, where you do things to get a rise out of people. That is not only just popular in politics, it's popular on social media. It's popular on people who have YouTube shows, who are influencers. That same attitude is extremely popular now. And it's a reflection of the evolutionary mentality of the people in the US. That's really what it is. I've come to the conclusion as more time passes by that the issues we have are more about the evolution of where we're at as a people rather than any political thing. Because to me, this just reflects that. There's no really, like, you are applauding somebody for a gotcha that isn't even a gotcha. It's just a manipulation. And the reason he's getting accolades from everybody, including this Black man, is because of the perception that he did something to one up his adversary. It is not a desire to cooperate. There's no desire to come to an understanding or have a human diplomatic dialogue. It's a desire, it's a perspective that we can only win by putting someone else down, that we can only win by sensationalizing something and getting something, someone to expose them without actually telling the truth. The truth doesn't matter at this point. It's about the perception. And frankly, that's the epitome of what the U.S. has become politically and otherwise. So yeah. I just have no
it's engraved with it. It's kind of like the mentality that we're the lesser of two evils. These are barbarians over here. Once again, Western society. We've created so much. We've done so much. We have a reason to go police everywhere. We're the ones who have to set the standards out there. You know, a lot of people in America, because I could see that happen in South Africa. I can only imagine what they're doing to those white farmers. And you did say it doesn't even make a difference. You don't even have to tell any truth anymore, fam. That's the other part I want to talk about. Now the presidency, from Joe Biden to Donald Trump, it's been ramped up where you can just completely lie. I mean, they all lie. But now it's just like on a regular basis because there is no accountability for anybody for saying things wrong. And they can just, there's a scene from the movie The Newspaper, I think it was called, with Michael Keaton and Marissa Tomei. And do not do your Marissa, what's her name? Marissa
Tomei.
Tomei.
you
Don't,
talking about him?
yeah, don't you do a Marissa Tomei impersonation because you do it worse than anybody else. I don't want to hear you do it. My Cousin Vinny is a sacred movie, and you shouldn't ruin it for me. I'm an Italian American. But in this movie, The Newspaper, it was like they were like, just put out what we got. Yeah, but that could be wrong. We'll clean it up on Wednesday. You know what I'm saying? Or what you put out on Monday, you just clean it up on Wednesday. And they can say these things. They could lie. And they lie, and it doesn't make a difference if they're not accurate. If they're inaccurate, it's okay. They still get their message out there. One of the things they got wrong, Jayme, if you can bring it on up, in NPR, is Trump got completely wrong the fact that he was saying that, those were crosses that were up there were people's graves. And I'm going to read this. This is from Johannesburg, because this is crazy because he can get this completely wrong. I believe they even said there was part videos that they were showing from the Congo as well. And some of the videos of the politician in Africa. I mean, I heard they got that mixed up. But this right here, Johannesburg, President Trump claims a genocide of white people, particularly Afrikaner farmers. Excuse me. I want to make sure I'm saying that right. Afrikaner farmers, fam, say that 5 times fast, is taking place in South Africa. When he met the country's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, in the Oval Office on Wednesday. Ramaphosa. Yeah, I got to get it right. Cyril Ramaphosa in the Oval Office on Wednesday, Trump played him a video previously shared at least twice on social media by his advisor, Elon Musk, that he said was evidence of this. Now, this is very bad. Those are burial sites right there. You see, this is burial sites over 1,000 of white farmers. I've never seen anything like it. The video showed a road lined on either side with scores of white crosses on a procession of cars carrying mourners paying their respects. A startled Ramaphosa asked Trump where the location was, saying he'd never seen the video before. South Africa, replied Trump. It was indeed a video taken in South Africa in KwaZulu-Natal province, but it was not a burial site. My parents, Glenn and Vida Rafferty, were murdered or gunned down by 6 men on their farm in 2020. So those crosses were erected as a memorial on the day of that funeral, Nathan Rafferty told NPR. Rafferty, a white South African who now lives in Brisbane, Australia, explained the local community used it as a means of protest to pay tribute. Contrary to Trump claims, no bodies were ever buried along that road, and the white crosses don't mark graves. Fam.
He lied.
Completely wrong. Completely fabricated the fucking story, and it's okay. And people will be like, well, that story was fabricated. It's not 1,000 burial sites. It doesn't make a difference. I know for a fact that white farmers are being persecuted, fam, from black people in Africa. And it's barbaric. It's terrible. And we need to stop it. He needs to sanction them. We don't need to have the G20 meeting over there. And Donald Trump can use this as he wants to push back against South Africa, not only because of Israel, but because they're part of BRICS. And he wants to push back against that too as well. I mean, that's why he had so much interest in Brazil and the Bannonites and stuff. They wanted to get Brazil away from China. Any way they can get anybody away from China, fam, they're going to do it. But China's going to do what they can do economically, no matter what. Your thoughts, fam?
Yeah, I mean, I think just overall, again, the truth is irrelevant. Trump, whoever, they lie all the time. Everything, most on social media is either out of context or with a lie. Even what was said by Julius Malema, even the things he said is without context. Those clips that they're taking don't have the context of what he's saying. And, because people don't understand what that is and what it means to resist and fight back when you've been colonized, etc., then they can use those clips against him and just say, oh, look, he just wants to kill all the white people, when that's not the case. And so, I mean, this is just all profitable for Trump. Trump just gets more points, and he gets to fearmonger a group of people in the U.S. And you have to look ahead. Why is he doing that? Well, he's trying to create, I think the role is to create extremism on both ends of the spectrum, especially for him on that side of the spectrum. So the liberals can come in and say, look at these extremists, and of course continue using these confrontations that will inevitably happen to expand the surveillance state. So everything goes back to power and that. So again, people just continue falling for the the superficial stuff.
We're building a wall, and the technocrats, tech bros, oligarchs, they're building a wall digitally. They're going to make sure you can never take their power from them. They want to make sure they have means all the time. They're going to add to the security state. You're right, too. It just feeds one side after the other. Damn Bongino. And what's his name? Anish Kapoor or whatever. No, I don't know. The Kanish guy, the FBI director now. Katash Patel.
Initius.
Whatever, right? Saying Epstein didn't hang himself and then following it up. You're going to be, if you're a bad dude, you're going to have a bad summer, says Bongino. And now it's the right in control, right? You know, and there were CIA agents that were fired for putting out a report that didn't go along with the Trump campaign's rhetoric, their narrative. So they fired them. There's some craziness going out there, the divide and conquer and giving each side power. It's nuts because I think a lot of the right is good with it and okay with it because the Democrats were in power, right? And they persecuted the right. So now the right's in power, persecuting the left. And it's like at the end of the day, it's one apparatus just taking control and persecuting everything. That being said, Donald Trump's sitting there, never seen anything like this. He wants to condemn what's going on in South Africa with the white farmers. But why doesn't he want to condemn this? Jayme, the next clip. This is a former, I believe, I don't know if he was a former defense minister, but take a look at this fam out there. This is just nuts. I'll read the text as it goes by. You got the video? From Khaleesi, we shared former Israeli MK Moshe Filin on Israel Channel 14 this morning. Every child, every baby in Gaza is an enemy. The enemy is not Hamas. What is that? Hamzix? All right, let's just play what he said and I'll read there. We need to conquer Gaza. Put the Trump's claim debunked out of there real quick.
כל ילד, כל תינוק בעזה הוא אויב. האויב הוא לא החמאס, והוא גם לא הזרוע הצבאית של החמאס, כמו שהפצ"רית שלנו מספרת לנו שהחמאסניק, אלא אם כן הוא חלק מהזרוע הצבאית. כל ילד בעזה הוא האויב.
אנחנו צריכים לכבוש את עזה
ולהשווה, שלא יישאר שם ילד עזתי אחד.
There is no other victory.
Okay, fam, I have another video. Actually, let me just throw it in there real quick. It's very quick. This goes right along with what you had, Jayme. So you can just put it up. It's the last one I'm going to put in that section.
But I mean, this is crazy. You want to talk about somebody that's a former military, that's a former Israeli cabinet member, right? Or, he had a position within the government. That mentality is out there. Somebody said there was a poll that it said 80% of people in Israel are okay with the starvation and what's going on, because we really haven't honed in on what's going on right now. Operation Gideon's Chariot, they said that the IDF is going to occupy 75% of the land in Gaza. They're starving people out. There's college students that are doing a hunger strike right now. They put a video up. Like they said that 5 aid trucks got in there. 3 of them didn't even have aid. And they need 500 a day. So all that stuff about Donald Trump sending his little boy Huckabee saying we're going to drop aid. Where's it at? What's going on? They're literally starving people out right now. It's a extermination going on. Literally today, now. I mean, they've been bombing forever, but this is the final countdown right here. This is how they're going to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And Donald Trump is condemning white farmers getting murdered in South Africa. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Donald Trump wants his own golden dome. So we haven't even talked about that, but that's another ridiculous thing that's happening. So this video actually shows that it's not just by the way, and we've talked about this before, it's not just the politicians in Israel, because you showed the politician, okay, it's literally the people, the majority of the people in Israel feel this way. That's a fact. That's the truth. That's the majority of people in Israel do not care about dead Palestinians. And if you say that you're somehow anti-Semitic, no, let them tell you themselves. Let's hear what this lady said about Palestinians. And
the airtight Israeli siege of Gaza is supposed to be over. However, some Israeli right-wingers have been trying to prevent aid lorries from entering the strip.
When there is a war, it doesn't matter who your enemy is. You need to destroy their offspring to prevent them from creating more offspring.
While a limited number of lorries have got in, the aid agencies say they've been unable to hand out food because the Israeli security clearance process is so complex. The airtight Israeli siege of Gaza is supposed to be over. However, some Israeli right-wingers have been trying to prevent.
So, I mean, this is fact that we're not making it up, that they're preventing the aid. They've been doing this the whole time. This is not news. But what I think people don't understand is this extends beyond just Israel as a state. This is an ideological hate that you're fighting. This is not different than the fascism from 1942. This is the same thing. And so what will lead us into the next, I think the next section or the next few sections later on is an understanding of how you combat that. So I'll save that for that. But the majority of people feel like this. This is not, this is how they feel. Like, we're not making it up. So how do you respond to that? Like, how do you respond to that other than by physically having to do something? Because otherwise you're going to be killed. And again, I go back to the majority of the people on the right who are pro Second Amendment. I'm pro Second Amendment. What are you going to do if somebody tries to kill you? Are you just going to stand by and let it happen? Mm-hmm. So I'll go into the third topic, actually. Yeah.
Well, let's get to the next topic, guys. I started that comment. Can you put that comment up there? Donald Trump said that every single one of those crosses had MS-13 on it, on them. A dingo ate me, baby. Yeah, that's why he was. All these crosses say MS-13 in South Africa. And the president of South Africa just stood there and said, "Okay, I can't even argue this." I mean, you saw his face, Sam. That's just crazy. Like, we are in the hardcore meat and potatoes of the cartoon right now. We're deep into the cartoon.
I said it to somebody the other day. We are an assholes version of a cartoon. Like, it's not even just a cartoon. It's like the asshole inside the asshole of an asshole's version of a cartoon. That's this timeline right now. Yeah.
Fucking marmot.
So, not to get so graphic, but yeah. So okay, so I want to discuss this because it's been pretty freaking crazy seeing people's cognitive dissonance, right? Here on the show, we constantly go after, when it was Biden, we went after Biden. Now it's Trump, we do the same. We, as Pasta likes to say, Pasta, what do? We call balls and strikes, Pasta. Balls and strikes. It's like,
I was going to say, everything that guy just said over there is bullshit. I was waiting for Jayme to jump right in there. And man, you just missed the opportunity. Could you play that real quick, Jayme?
Everything that guy just says, bullshit. Thank you.
That. I didn't know if you want me to play that one or balls and strikes. We do call balls and strikes. The analogy is that no matter who is up to bat, he doesn't get any special treatment. He doesn't get any special, not disadvantages. Like, in other words, we're not going to be biased against him. We're going to call balls and strikes no matter what. What's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. You call it like you see it.
Right. Because, when you're pushed by the truth, you're eventually going to piss someone off. And that's the thing. And so we focused primarily in the West, in the fault of the United States, because the United States, let's face it, they're the great Satan, as they are called in West Asia. They are the leading cause, the beast, right? When we're on the belly of the beast, we need to tackle our own beast. We need to, as Pasta says, clean our own house. We need to stop our interventions, our endless wars, then etc. We talk about this. We talk about, you know, the UK, the EU, NATO, the fault of all of these countries, including their allies in the Five Eyes and so on. We rarely are critical of other powerful countries like Russia or China because they are in a way reacting to the existing world and how it's really meant to crush them, right? And we have seen the rise of China. We have seen the rise of Russia. We have seen the presentation of a multipolar world order and what that could mean. Now, however, that doesn't mean that if I point out, or if someone points out some facts about Russia or about China, or even about any of these other countries that aren't even as powerful, Iran, anybody, although Iran is pretty powerful, I would say, you people should react in a way where they just try to justify something that is fair criticism. And again, I always go back to, I'm not going to tell these countries how to run their business because I'm coming from the United States. I'm coming from a place that's, you know, has a lot, the majority of the fault in everything that's been happening. But there are things that need to be talked about, and especially in regard to China. I've talked about things in regard to Russia, in regard to the Israeli relationship that's there, that, by the way, is rarely pointed out by anybody on media for whatever reason. But you will see it pointed out by me and by others, a few others. And China. So this whole situation was brought up about China, right? And I put this up because I saw this shared on Telegram, and I saw my good friend and journalist Vanessa share it. Now, I said that none of these countries should be selling a damn thing to Israel, especially the non-Western countries constantly screwed by the NATO, and Israel, by NATO and Israel. There's no excuse for this at this point. So this is a chart of the countries that sell the most to Israel. Israel bought $91.5 billion of goods from around the world in 2024. They are the biggest exporters to Israel were China with 19 billion, the United States with 9.4 billion, and Germany with 5.6 billion. So you can see in the chart, 4 is Italy, 5 is Turkey, 6 is Russia, 7 is France, 8 is South Korea, then India, Spain, UK, Japan, Netherlands, Vietnam, and Switzerland. So this is the amount of exported goods to these countries from China. So China isn't buying anything, really. They are mostly exporting to Israel, right? So, okay, so that's number one. And I said that they shouldn't. None of these people should. Why? Well, so while Gazans are getting completely and totally starved to death, while there's massive famine, they're not allowed, Israel's not allowing aid trucks in. These countries that have said, denounced, for example, China, what's happened in Gaza, that have denounced Israel, that really should have shown that, okay, this is wrong. We should stand against it, at least at the UN Security Council meetings. Why are they continuing to do business with Israel? Because when we talk about BDS, boycott, divestment, sanction, this is a legitimate way to stop Israel. But the majority of these countries, many of them, some of them in the global south, are continuing to do business with Israel. Now, obviously, again, it's not necessarily weapons. China's not leading the cause, and you're not going to see Chinese weapons killing Palestinians. You're not going to see those bombs being dropped by China. Nobody is saying that. But if we are to create a world or a paradigm that is different, why are we continuing to lead this way? And so I want to analyze the responses I got, because there's so many justifications for this. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to criticism of China, because there's more. And I don't think it's just about China, by the way. I think nobody here should. The United States, we know they're in bed with Israel. We know that. We know that the UK is. We know. But really, if Israel doesn't have the capacity to sustain itself, it will not be able to continue what it's doing to Gaza, economically or otherwise. That is a reality. And that is what it's going to take to stop Israel, short of military intervention, which I think is actually a valid thing in this instance. So when people say to me, yeah, but China needs these weapons, to expand its economic hold, its economic resources, because otherwise it will be crushed by the West. It doesn't need Israel. Israel needs China. China doesn't need Israel. So right away, that doesn't work for me. That excuse doesn't work for me. And again, it's not just China. We could talk about Russia. We could talk about India. We could talk about, any Vietnam. I mean, the countries that are non-European, right? The countries that have been under Western hegemony. Why do we expect the world to be better if we're still operating from a capitalist mindset? This is a capitalist thing. This is a capitalist driven thing. And people come back and say, well, China's communist. China's not communist. China is I would say at most it has a socialist government, but is it really operating in a communist way in this way? No, it really isn't. So I don't care how many China files come and say that they are, that the reality is presenting that that's not the case. We can say, well, everybody's doing it. Sure. Okay. And nobody's trying to singularly blame China, but I think it is a fair, constructive criticism to point that out. That's the first thing I had to say. Pasta, let me know what your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, I want you to go through your evidence and we can talk about it. But I mean, before you start doing it and you start showing us this and we start analyzing it a little bit more, obviously no country is clean, totally clean, right?
Yeah.
The argument would be, fam, that to build your nation strong, right, as an economic power, you sometimes have to get dirty because you're playing in a dirty society. Right. That means you can justify selling weapons. Hey, listen, we sold them weapons to defend themselves. We didn't know what they were going to do with it. But, we haven't had any military action since 1973, China, right? It's been that long. And you guys, every single day, the West has some altercation somewhere in some part of the globe, if not multiple at all times. So, I mean, we want to make our nation strong. We believe by doing it, we do it economically. It's a global stage. So sometimes some things are going to slip through the cracks that we might not necessarily like. But, we wanted to buy oil from the Saudis in yuan. The only way to do that was to sell the Saudis maybe some drones. Yeah, we know they killed some people in Yemen and some Houthis died. But now, they're going to even get invited into BRICS. And we're going to be able to trade with them. So, I need to get energy to get my people to survive, fam. I have 1 billion people in my, 1 billion citizens in my country. And we need to make sure that they stay loyal to us. We got to give them nice things like transportation, a decent standard of living, good food, resources. And we can only do that if we exist on the global stage. So I'm sorry that some of our drones went where they were. We only sold it to them to defend themselves. What do you want us to do? And yes, we are a communist country because we have a centralized healthcare program, infrastructure, education, whatnot. We just have other forms of free markets thriving in our mixed economy. But we do have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We have the best system.
A mixed economy is
Yeah.
A mixed economy automatically doesn't make.
Do you think Fee should come out and go back in? Jayme, is she okay? She looks delayed. I mean, yeah, fam, you're like delayed and fuzzy. I looked at both the Rumble and the YouTube.
Okay,
yeah, you're very fuzzy, and I'm like halfway clear. So why don't you come out and go back in real quick and see if you can strengthen your internet? Why don't we take a quick 30-second break, and we'll be right back. Let's just do that. Okay, Jayme, just put up some music for 30 seconds so there's no dead space.
Is that better? Hello? Okay, good. Okay. Pasta's a little bit busy or frozen. I don't know what it is. But I want to show something here. I want to show something on the stage. Okay, so this is the which countries sell the most, trade the most with Israel. What do they buy and sell, right? And I want to just show this is where that came from, that chart. So it talks about Israel's 2024 global trade consisted of 91.5 billion in imports, 61.7 billion of exports. So you have that. And then you have on Tuesday, the UK government suspended free trade negotiations with Israel in response to its military conduct in the war on Gaza and the expansion of illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. Not that I think this is going to stick, right? Because it's the UK. They're in another way or another, one way or another tied to Israel. But God damn, the UK is doing it before China. I mean, everything you said is true, Pasta, before the break. You said, well, I have billions of people and I need to feed them and I need to maintain our country, right? That's the same mentality that Russia has, a pragmatic approach, right? We got people to feed, a country to grow, interests to protect, resources to protect. We're fighting a war. We're being sanctioned. Nobody's saying that that's not true. But do you need Israel to do that? You don't. And that's it for me. You don't need to placate to Israel. You can literally say, we're going to stop having economic negotiations with Israel, and you would be fine if you're China. If you're actually the majority of these countries, you would be fine. What is it about Israel that they can't do that? What is it about countries that still push the dead end two-state solution? The two-state solution would mean apartheid. It was already like that before. They don't want even that. They want to, like this lady said, they want to kill all the Palestinians. This is what they said. This is what she said, not what I'm saying. This is what she said. They want to eliminate all of these people. You can't combat that with more BS by sitting at the UN and making laws that don't enforce anything for Israel. You can't do that way. So what do you do next? Before you do military intervention, you do economic intervention. And if Russia, Iran, Syria, Venezuela, Cuba are all being sanctioned and very little is being done about it, why can't these countries stop their economic negotiations, transactions, trade with Israel? It wouldn't hurt China. It wouldn't hurt China 1 second to do that. So I'm sorry. I don't accept I have billions of people to feed when it comes to Israel, because Israel is one entity. It is not, you're not talking about a gigantic country. And even if that's the case, if they were a gigantic country, where do we draw the line then? How far does this go then? Are we just going to allow every day to go by where we see people getting completely killed and doing nothing about it? I mean, where's the line? I ask you, how do we draw this line? And you can do something about it. If you're a powerful country like China, you can do something about it. If China and the non-aligned axis and the global South are not going to be a counter to the West, then what are they? Like, yeah. What if they're not, like, what's their purpose?
Yeah, but fam, at the UN, China, we're more vocal about what's going on than anybody else. I mean, Russia can sometimes join in. They're not also economically cutting off Israel. They're doing business with Israel too as well. It's just, I mean, it's Hamas. We have our issue with separatists here that are radicalized by religion. So we don't want to necessarily go and fund Hamas, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I mean, that's the I'm just doing the devil's advocate at this point, I mean, I don't know. It's they surely don't. And I was putting up some comments. I was starting some like this one here. If China is doing business with Israel, then they are aiding the genocide. That that's I'd like to see some other people who are very much pro genocide. Listen, they're doing business with them. They don't care what's really going on. On one hand, you can't say something at the UN and then you're statazi and shutting up on the other and still just doing business on a regular day basis. So, and I like this discussion today because, there's no nuance there. Remember, like when I was getting on Carl Zahn, the beginning of my shows, and trying to understand China more and stuff, because even the people in the Bernie Sanders movement in the LA Democratic Party were just so ignorant to what was really going on. There's a happy medium. I think there's a lot of positive things that do happen there in China, but there are negatives, and it's hard to have a nuanced conversation because even in this topic right here, people get so tribal and it's ridiculous. We need to push critical thinking, and that's what this segment is promoting today, is pushing independent mindsets. Okay, yeah, they're great, they do this, that, but let's not act like their shit don't stank.
Let's not act like everybody is just that doesn't like the US is just perfect. And the thing is, again, my focus is not on this, but I have to point this out because we're talking about a genocide. We're talking about a global a humanitarian situation that's happening where most are not doing enough, and people that can and should be doing enough that have been completely vilified and attacked by the West should be doing more against a major ally of the United States, funded by US weapons. So disappointing is an understatement. Okay, so Jayme, can you put this up? This is from Dissident Voice, right? And I want to show this. This was written by Kim Peterson, who put this out, and it was shared by several people. And they talk about, the genocide, and it's called Palestine and the Conscience of China. And I want to scroll down to Randy Shields. Okay. He said, if all Russia and China are going to do is talk, they could start talking about a one-state solution. They could put some urgency into the situation. They could let Abbas and the Gulf family dictatorships that they still do business with know that the status quo is unacceptable. They could start telling the truth to the world that the two-state solution is impossible, and that was only ever a delaying tactic by Israel. They could even announce that Palestine is under consideration for BRICS membership. They could cut off whatever trade they have and cut off diplomatic relations with Israel, recall ambassadors. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
My question was, but my own theory is always clean your own house first. Like United States citizens and Western citizens, even the ones who are anti-Zionist, anti-genocide, anti-war, they could still have an obligation to keep their mouths shut when it comes to China and Russia, whatnot, because their country is the one that is, causing the initial action, is the major aggressor, is expanding the empire. We've argued that they're not necessarily junior imperialist the way some of the people on the left want to describe Russia, right? The Amy Goodman crowd, forget about it right now. You know what I'm saying? And China that way. But I would always say the analogy of accusing China is like working at McDonald's, walking out to the street and screaming across the street bad about what Burger King does. No, you got your own house to clean first. But then, Randy Shields answered it. Well, okay, if they're going to do is just talk and they're not going to take serious action, this is what they should talk about. That's a leftist finding a compromise, and an area that it answered the question I was going to ask you. I was going to say, well, what about the theory of cleaning your own house first? Like, in other words, we can't hold China accountable until we hold our own country accountable first. But Randy Shields just put it perfectly here. We don't want to hear the hot air. If you're going to talk about something, then talk about a one-state solution, okay? If all you're going to do is open your mouth and talk, and you're really not going to stand behind your actions, and you're really not going to push out and say, Israel, for what you're doing, the genocide you're doing is bad. We're done. Ambassadors come home. Trade is cut off. Go buy all your necessities, your simple stuff from another country and go do it, and go clog that hole real quick. We're pulling back. You know what I'm saying? That's it. If they're not going to stand behind their words, then at least talk about something like a one-state solution and stop the hot air of a two-state solution. Because what you're saying to me, fam, is that the talk of a two-state solution is just virtue signaling by Russia and China.
It is, and they're very keen on it. I mean, they always talk about a two-state solution, and it's an unrealistic solution. It's not going to happen. Israel doesn't want it, and what it would mean for Palestine would be to be subservient to Israel, and they're not going to accept that. So either way, it's just not going to happen. And so Shields continues later on. If you scroll there, Jayme, he says China plays a long game. There's plenty of evidence of Chinese advancements in science, technology, supply chains, manufacturing. The question is whether China and Russia will come through with morally based support benefiting a leading world economy, or befitting a leading world economy. The Communist Party of China, CPC, has made great strides for its people, having achieved Shuangkang, moderately prosperous society. Moving forward, China aims for a common prosperity, a society based on social equality and economic equity. And then he goes on and talks about that this commitment to pursuing peaceful development has recently been thrown into question by China's business arrangements connected to the Israeli occupation of Palestine, which can hardly be construed as peaceful development from the Palestinian side or any morally based side, right? And they talk about Mao Zedong's support of the Palestinian liberation. This is true. By the way, Mao Zedong didn't have negotiations with apartheid South Africa. Mao Zedong and the Communist Party were very much in line with the Palestinian cause. And then he talks about how China has a history of supporting it, but it is uneven. More recently, this has shifted a little bit, right? And they talk about international law. They talk about all of this. When it comes to the UN, this is what they lead with: the diplomacy and international law. But Randy points to this whole scenario, just not, if you're talking about a moral question, are they, Russia or China, going to follow this based on what's morally justified rather than what's, economically prosperous? And he doesn't essentially thinks that this is not going to happen, right? And so later on in this article, they talk about this specific article by Shua Amre, who wrote an article, and this is Razan Shua Amre, who is a Palestinian researcher interested in Chinese foreign policy in the Middle East. And she wrote this article called "How China is Quietly Aiding Israel's Settlement Enterprise." And this was put out by the Middle East Eye. And she said, away from Beijing's lofty rhetoric about defending Palestinians, Chinese firms are helping to sustain illegal settlements. Now, these are facts. These are numbers. Despite China having supported the UN General Assembly Resolution 3379 that defines Zionism as a form of racism and racial discrimination in 1975, she provides numerous examples of Chinese support for Zionism. There's the Adena Agricultural Solutions, a former Israeli company now fully owned by the Chinese state-run firm China National Chemical Corporation, ChemChina, which is directly linked to the militarized destruction of Palestinian livelihoods. There is in recent years, she says, several state-owned Chinese companies, along with other private Chinese firms, have invested directly or indirectly in Israeli settlements or companies operating within them. Take the case of Tnuva, a major Israeli food producer that operates in illegal settlements. Despite international calls to boycott the company, China's state-owned conglomerate Bright Food acquired a 56% stake in Tnuva in 2014. This is during one of the largest Palestinian fights between Palestine and Israel. In 2021, Tnuva won a tender to operate 22 public transportation lines that serve 16 settlements in Mateh Yehuda, all built on occupied land in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. These aren't just buses or infrastructure supporting colonial entrenchment, making settler life easier and more permanent. And so, again, there is really a lot going on here, and I could go on and on and on. And people should read about it. People should actually look into this stuff, because there's a lot more when it comes to Yemen, and the relationship between Russia and Yemen is not positive. I mean, Yemen has a very negative view on China because of how China has basically supplied arms and economic had partnerships with Saudi Arabia, who were literally bombing the Yemen people. And so these are things that nobody talks about, like very few people talk about. And one of the people that talked about them, if you can put on the next the tweet, was Vanessa Beeley, who, by the way, went unredacted some time ago defending China over the fabricated Uyghur genocide, which we on the show have completely debunked. I mean, many times we talked about that is an unfair criticism on China. You know, when we talk about a genocide, this is one of the things that's completely and totally fabricated by the US, by the West. And she made a tweet, and if you can pull up that tweet, I think that's next. Yeah. And in this tweet, she basically had posted what I posted, and the responses. And I just want to go over the responses really, because some of the people's responses are really bad. But she also made this tweet about people getting angry, right? And we'll go over the tweets or the responses, but she has this really good thread that if you want actual information on what she's talking about, you guys should look at it. China was supplying drones to Saudi Arabia. This is what I was talking about, to kill Yemenis. That's a fact. China looted Yemeni oil while Yemeni people were being bombed and starved. We talked about this years ago with Vanessa, actually. We talked about this years ago. China's doing business with Al-Qaeda in Syria. Yes, so is Russia. China still supports the dead two-state solution in Palestine, even while Israel is committing genocide and stealing more Palestinian land. Yes, China is enabling the collaborative with Zionist settlements. China has just been awarded greater influence in occupied Palestine by the chief genocider Netanyahu. My focus is on ending the genocide and Zionist expansionism globally. If you don't like it, feel free to block me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so she has these pictures, and then she has a whole thread of links that people can read. So because for lack of time, right, I'm not going to go on that. But what I wanted to analyze, Pasta, and ask you was some of these responses that some of them make points, right? And this is one of them. I just want to get your opinion on this one.
Good.
This is from Andy Borham, and he said he's responding to her post about the amount of goods that Israel imports from China. And he said that's thanks to China's non-interference policy. It annoys some people, but China won't withhold trade from any nation based on political considerations. That's one of China's fundamental policies when it comes to international relations. So non-interventionism, right? We love that about China. They're good non-interventionists. So this is what they do. So my question to you is, if they are selling weapons though to Yemen, if they are engaged in economics with Israel, is that really non-interventionism?
Well, some can argue that the weapons would be different than what they're doing as far as helping the infrastructure in some of these countries, right? Like when it comes to Israel, they're putting buses and lines and making it easier for the colonizers, but it's all about, infrastructure and transportation. And if they want to have this argument that, we're going to be the leaders of infrastructure and transportation everywhere, and we're not going to have, it's almost like a libertarian mindset, right? When they say my body, my choice trumps any reason for there to be prostitution made illegal, right? That would trump everything. Like their freedom of speech, that trumps everything. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech, and you can't censor stuff that says stuff that you don't like. A woman's body is her body, her choice. Therefore, you can't, ultimately trumps everything. China's position is we're going to be the economic partners, and we're going to be the number one in infrastructure and transportation. It doesn't make a difference what nation state is doing it. We're keeping the politics out of it. It could be a separate argument, I'm saying, from that of selling weapons that are being used to kill Yemenis children. So, I mean, I hear what he's saying. I don't necessarily buy it because, once again, this is where I believe a representative government is put there to have nuance. And if its citizens think that they shouldn't be selling weapons to kill people, and I bet if you asked a bunch of Chinese people out there in China, I haven't been there yet, do you think it's okay to sell weapons to these countries that are going to kill poor people? They'll probably be against it, and the government shouldn't do that stuff. There should be able to be nuance within a government. It's interesting, but I disagree with that, gentleman. You know what I'm saying? For what's going on, if they're creating real real human rights abuses, which Israel is doing right now, you should have a right to say, we're not going to do business with you. We don't agree with the way you're doing business.
Yeah, well, I agree with that aspect. But I also, the other thing I have with that is,
I mean, that's a good response, by the way, fam. That's not like an over ideological,
no,
you know what I'm saying? And, you know,
that's why I placed it there. That's why I put it there, because I agree that it's a good response. But my whole scenario with that is, when you're talking about a global genocide, just the same as you were talking about the Holocaust, this is like a modern day Holocaust. Non-interference is taking an action. You're talking about a situation where there is a group of people being completely ethnically cleansed by a powerful entity that is supported by an even more powerful entity that wants to destroy you too. And my issue with the East and the global South, because I support them in their fight against the hegemony of the West, is that they don't seem to understand that there is no diplomacy when you're in the face of this. The most diplomatic thing you can do is economically attack your enemy. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, is there has to be some sort of military aid. When you saw the Rwanda massacres that were occurring, there was military intervention because people were killing each other. But it's not the same as military intervention for a color revolution. We're talking about just ending a genocide. I mean, we had World War II happen. Sorry, let me not get ahead of ourselves here. World War II happened, and there were countries that were motivated to stop Germany, not the United States. It wasn't for the Nazis, we know that, but from the Soviet Union. Their motivation was to stop fascism. That was an ideological motivation. What I'm seeing from China and Russia, also to a different extent, is a pragmatic, economically driven type of government structure, type of existence. So the question that Randy was asking, are they going to follow a morally conscious, righteous thing? My answer to that is not necessarily. Yeah. Because then if you're driven by economic motive, and my issue is a lot of people in the media sphere, independent media sphere, left, whatever, have just made Russia and China complete and total like angelic figures that are deities, and they can't be in any way, shape, or form criticized. And like, as you said, we focus on the United States because we know where this is coming from, but this is something where something could easily be done. It's not hard to say, all right, we're not going to do business with Israel, all right, until they stop doing what they're doing, at the very least. That is the bare minimum that should be happening.
Yeah. And by the way, Randy Shields wrote a book called Crocodile Tears, and you know, obituaries on the Obama years, and you can see him as a drone firing. So this guy is independent minded. He's free thinking. He's not he's just not attacking the left. This is a nuanced criticism. And right when you read exactly, he goes, okay, then if all you're going to do is talk, stop with the hot air. Stop with the virtue signaling. Stop talking about a two-state solution. That's just, you're just virtue signaling. Let's talk about something. This guy is independent thinking over here. It's a great criticism, unlike some of the Steve Bannon criticism, where they think everything that is evil that's done, it's done by Xi Jinping in China. So I'm really glad that you brought this here today, because I think this is some good stuff, fam. So.
Yeah, and I just want to continue a little bit because I'm running out of time here. So we have this Beatrice, she wrote on, this is just a response that I thought was good on Vanessa's thread. She said, Shanghai International Port Group, a Chinese state-owned company, operates the port of Haifa. This is the largest of Israel's international seaport. And in March, Netanyahu issued permission to China to double its capacity. That's what Vanessa was talking about, I think, earlier. If you can put that one up. There it is. So there you go. So that actually happened. So also, you know, when it comes to Israel did advocate for Russia to keep its bases in Syria. that sort of thing. So there are relationships that are important, I think, to China and Russia when it comes to Israel, perhaps in influence in certain areas in West Asia, right? But is it necessary to if, for example, you have major countries like China and Russia end all economic relationships with Israel, it would affect Israel. It would affect Israel, who is starving Palestinians right now. So because it doesn't matter if Israel gets starved, they're still not feeding Palestinians in one way or another. So I think that this moment requires an elevated level of thinking. This is not a normal situation. If it was a normal situation, a normal war, you could even argue that, well, wars, we don't really, this is not a war. This is a genocide. This is a Holocaust. And I think people, they're trying to frame it as the Gaza war. It's not the Gaza war. It's the Gaza extermination. And people need to really get comfortable with saying that.
I hope China's okay with sailing their boats around the dead bodies that are floating in the water as they pull in to double their capacity. That is something to think about. We know where you stand. We know where you stand. And that's listen, there's a good way of just understanding what the Chinese government is to itself. All governments are argued by the libertarians are bad. Chase Oliver, that was his main thing. It's a government. Governments are bad. But fam, I'm with you. I don't think we're ready for anarchy either. But I mean, Xi Jinping, you got to look in the mirror. But I mean, I know they'll just use an excuse is that, listen, we don't want to upset the wet. They're the maniacs. They'll bomb this place to smithereens. We got to deal with what we got to deal with. So
I just, the last thing I want to share on this one is this is just a bad response, like a negative response, right? You don't understand geopolitical realities because if China even decreases the amount of stuff they sell to Israel, the U.S. will carpet nuke China, put 2,000 quadrillion worth of sanctions on them, and 60 trillion Chinese people would starve to death. I don't think so. I think that's excessive. I don't think that would happen.
I just kind of played into that before we played it because, once again, you're going to say Xi Jinping is like, he might use this like, they're psychos. We don't want to start war with them. Look, we're selling plastic mops, fam, and little small, clocks and furniture cover and umbrellas and patio stuff. We're not selling them bombs and like crazy. We're selling them junk stuff. I mean, that's up to them. We don't want to get involved with tribal affairs. Remember what they used to say in California when they would talk about the tribes and they were arguing with each other? I remember it was in a group and they're like, we don't get involved in tribal disputes. Some of the white people, they're like, well, and I understood. I'm like, good. Don't get involved with those affairs over there. That's what China's doing. We don't get in tribal dispute, fam. We sell our cheap mops, our cheap patio furniture to whoever wants to buy them. We're not biased. That's how we do business. That's how we're going to be an
You can't tell me that's communist. I
don't know if it's not communist. It's just not anti-imperialist.
It's neither. And the thing is, so did Pontius Pilate. So
if they were China, if they were communists, you're right. They would be fighting for the poor people, for the proletariat. I agree, fam. But it's a different world. It's a modern world.
It's a different world. And I get they got to survive, but I don't condone this at all.
These are for water in the desert. You know what I'm saying? We'll sell them to you cheap.
Okay. So the last thing, Pasta, I don't have too much time, but I just kind of want to go over this quickly because we put it in the title. And this is an important thing that I think we might have to discuss too further at a later time. We're going to talk about the fact that regardless of this situation being a false flag, Pasta, and you can tell me if you think it was a false flag. We're talking about Elias Rodriguez killing 2 Israeli embassy workers. I've talked about this with Vanessa the other day in depth. And, for me, the issue, could it be a false flag? It could it not be? It may not be. Yeah. But we know Ken Klippenstein got somehow he got this document manifesto leaked. Somehow this guy gets leaks from, the government, from the intelligence. We know he was paid by the USAID.
Narrative management is a necessary thing.
Yeah.
And we must take a useful idiot like Ken Klippenstein and feed him the script.
We could go into depth about all of that, but Nico made a video that I think surmises things pretty well. But first of all, I just want to ask, I just want to quickly, fam, ask you what you what your take on that. False flag or not. My issue is I don't really care. I think there's an underlying issue that's more important.
Does it even matter? We know there will be an apparatus there to exploit the situation and to control the narrative and move people into a divisive manner of a team A versus team B. So it doesn't.
Why do you sound like Sanders?
Matter.
He wouldn't even say this. This
I'm
is
doing his
too,
voice
like,
when he says, "What does it
Sanders.
even matter?" Remember when after they're like, "Do you think he would have beat Donald Trump?" What does it even matter? I gotta highlight two moments out for him.
Let's just play Nico's really quick. It's 4 minutes long.
Surmises the whole situation.
Surmises. Imagine.
Don't you tell me. Please, Jayme, save me. Hurry up, play.
Now listen, no one can say for sure whether or not those 2 Israeli diplomats that were killed in DC was a false flag operation on behalf of Israel or done by Israel. But I'm just gonna say, if there was a country that is capable and likely to do a false flag operation, and if there was a country that has shown a pattern of committing false flag operations, especially in and against the nations who primarily support them, it would be Israel. And this would be the type of false flag operation they would do. So first of all, free Palestine. Secondly, I'm not saying this out of ignorance. I'm saying this out of a pattern of historical context that we have available to us. For example, we have the USS Liberty attack, the OG false flag from Israel, where Israel attacked a U.S. naval ship in the middle of the 6-day war and tried to convince the world that it was Arabs who attacked the United States. Or we can look at the King David Hotel bombing of 1946. And yes, you saw that date correctly. That is July 1946, just a couple of months after Great Britain and the rest of the West handed Palestine over to Israel. Israelis, disguised as Arabs, bombed the King David Hotel, killed a bunch of British citizens, and the goal was to get Great Britain out of Israel while blaming Arabs. Or we can look at Operation Susanna. Now, this was a failed false flag attempt carried out by Israel in Egypt in 1954. In this failed operation, Israel planted bombs in American, British, and Egyptian civilian targets like cinemas, libraries, etc., hoping to undermine American confidence in the Egyptian government. Now, although thankfully this was a failure, the goal was still the same: kill innocent individuals and place blame on somebody else in order for Israel to achieve its desired goals. So what I'm trying to say is that it's important to free Palestine. But in addition to that, Israel has a habit of literally killing people in order to achieve its goals. And it seems like they kill people in their allied nations because their allied nations will protect them and give them cover as they commit these false flag operations. I mean, we're still trying to figure out what that whole dancing Israeli thing is about. If you know, you know. And if you don't know, you should look it up.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
Secondly, I think the equivalent of saying Hail Hitler or believing in Hitler's ideology would literally be genociding an entire ethnicity or nationality solely because they are said ethnicity or nationality. Like you're doing right now, you psychopathic piece of shit.
Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler.
But, you know, we're probably going to get the rest of this footage, right? Because this is DC. So the CCTV footage should be all over social media by now, even though we're only seeing the part where the alleged shooter is screaming Free Palestine over and over again. I mean, DC might be the most surveilled city in the entire country. So I'm sure by now there's been more footage released, right? Because otherwise people might find it a little bit suspicious that y'all managed to get your hands on a manifesto before y'all managed to get your hands on more footage to confirm that this suspect that is screaming Free Palestine did in fact commit the crime you were accusing this individual of committing. So like I said, everybody, there's there's no way to confirm whether or not this is or is not a false flag operation. But I'm just saying, bruh, y'all not doing a good job of convincing me that it ain't. But who knows? We might never find out. Because like this Mossad agent said during a 60-minute interview, the world is Israel's stage. They're the main actors. We're just here to watch the show because that isn't the slightest bit eerie.
We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors. We're the producers. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
So to close, I would like to say free Palestine, free Palestine. I would like an order of free Palestine with a side of free Palestine and make sure that Palestine is free until it's backwards.
Well, Nico, that could be considered very anti-Semitic, what you just talked about right over there. I know there's a lot of people screaming that. Listen, I've heard stories from people talking about so we're talking about all these psyops that are taking place all around that, the argument is that Israel has had a big hand in it, probably if not the most, but a lot. They're the Mossad, which is the intelligence agency version of the CIA for that country. The government within the government has been doing this stuff for quite some time. They want to control the narrative. They want to control the meetings. But I've even heard some stuff that said that, the Mossad was blowing up synagogues in the early 1900s, in the late 1800s, or whatever it may be, because, they wanted to always create a situation in which all Jews around the world were dependent on the Zionist nation. So they had to strike fear. And it was actually the Mossad doing that, not like the people in Iraq and Iran and all these other spots where there were a lot of Jews throughout the Middle East. So I've even heard stories of that, the need to make Jewish people dependent on what the Zionists want. That's what this is right over here. It wouldn't put it past me. But at the end of the day, I'll say this. What does it even matter, right? There's going to be an apparatus that's going to try to take it a certain way. We should even still be able to argue or debate or to have conversations about the fact. Let's say if this really was a situation that person doesn't represent every single Palestinian out there that just wants to murder people left and right. It is a micro of the macro, what's going on, this wasn't like a state-ordered operation, from the Palestinian resistance to go kill a Zionist in D.C., an American Zionist. I mean, we shouldn't allow the Zionist entity to manufacture consent to go along and continue what they're doing with their ethnic cleansing process. Using this, we should say, sorry, stop it, no way. It's a single person acting out, which doesn't represent, what a lot. However, too, if it was a situation, we can also examine the fact that this is what it's leading to, that they are forcing more anti-Semitism across the globe. And, it doesn't give them the right to do what they're doing. And this is the environment they are creating.
Exactly. So that's what I want to say, Jayme, if you can put it up. These are the consequences. Okay. Whether or not this is real or not, the fact that let's say it's a false flag, the fact that somebody has to do this to give more sympathy for Israel, or if it's real and that somebody decided, like what's his name, I'm blanking, who set himself on fire,
Bergnall or no, that's not.
No. The military gentleman, I just said his name the other day. Whether somebody comes to this conclusion that nothing can be done, because nothing is being done, right? We talked about international law. Yes, Aaron Bushnell. We talked about international law. We talked about that's not working. We talked about economic sanctions. Nobody's doing it really, except Yemen. We talked about military also action, Yemen and other parts of the resistance. So nothing is really being done by the major world governments. If you feel as a person that you can't do anything other than, show some sort of protest like Aaron Bushnell did by lighting himself on fire, and this guy did by acting against people who are participating in it, because the guy was a former IDF, I believe. So if you're at that point, then what does that say about the society we're in, right? Yeah. And I think that's the main point of this that I wanted to get to, is the fact that for me, whether it's a false flag or not, the fault lies and it goes back to Israel and the US's actions in supporting Israel's genocide. right? Like this is, to me, this is a reflection of where we're at right now. But for me, unfortunately, I saw a lot of people online saying, oh, this is too much. This has gone too far. We can't associate ourselves. The funny part was PSL, the Party of Socialism and Liberation, who's not a very big fan of us. Neither are we of you. Decided to alienate themselves from this guy. This is how, milquetoast they are, because this guy was a member in 2017. In 2017, he was a member. They were like, we have nothing to do with this. We would never advocate for this. And so it was funny because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, instead of taking the conversation, well, okay, maybe this wasn't, the most PR friendly way of doing something. And yes, this could be considered terrorism from a Western standpoint. To people in West Asia, they're like, you who are seeing this be made a huge deal of, to people in Gaza, to people in Lebanon, to people in Yemen, in Syria, who are literally suffering right now the consequences of Israeli violence and Israeli destruction. To them, this is just laughable. You couldn't last a half a day in what we experience every day due to Israeli violence. And the moment this happens to them, an ounce of retribution from the perspective of the Palestinian resistance, from the perspective of armed resistance, the belief is that you have a right to fight back. This is a protest tactic. It may not be well received by many, especially like the libertarians and so many that, just don't think this is very productive is the word. It's not productive, right? You can say it's not pragmatic, it's not productive for the West. But for people outside of the West, this is normal because we don't understand the idea of, for example, a suicide bomber. We don't understand the idea of dying for a cause that you're likely to die in because you believe in it. We don't understand. That concept is so alien to us. But when you go to these countries and you see how these people are getting killed every single day and their entire family is wiped out, then you start understanding, wait a minute, like what's the point? What's there to fight? What's there to do if I'm not fighting? And so from that perspective, for me, it's the fact that Israel doesn't need an excuse. Israel will create an excuse tomorrow for whatever reason to kill Palestinians. So people are saying this is going to hurt the movement because Israel now has an excuse, but Israel has had 20 million excuses. It doesn't matter. They've told us what they want to do to Palestine. There's no discussion to be had. They've been pretty honest about that. So I really don't think this hurts the Palestinian cause. I think it exposes how, Western protests in the US and so on and so forth really lack an understanding of what the resistance is.
You don't think it does? You don't think it does because you don't watch enough mainstream media, right? And I can't.
But these people were never for it in the first place. What are they doing to help Palestine other than saying, well, those people shouldn't die. Let me go on with my life. Like they're not, it's not changing the reality of the situation on the ground is what I'm saying. Whether or not they say, wow, this has gone too far. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So I misinterpreted that because I was saying what I'm trying to say is that what's really going on right now is kind of crazy when it comes to the whole divide and conquer situation. The way the mainstream media went into this, because I was watching the morning this happened. The morning this happened, Tatiana, who I'm going to play a clip of, well, she's a little small part in the clip coming up when we close the show to promote Wake Up America. Because I'm sitting here, I'm saying to myself, man, I wish we had a right winger on the show right now, a Trump person, to come talk with these issues with us, to give us their perspective and stuff, the way they see this. But, the divide and conquer part. And, obviously been watching a lot of morning shows to do some research and just seeing how awful it is out there. Because not only is it just bad TV, not entertaining, it's just so tribal. Fox News and Newsmax, for instance, they have 3-hour morning shows just about these networks because they're grabbing, once again, I think they're just everyday low-informed voters, the people who won't necessarily go down the rabbit hole. But they also kind of shape their political biases, right? You know what I'm saying? That's what this morning show is meant to do. Hey, come in here, hang out with us. Let us wake up with you while you get through the day. It's light unpacking, but we're going to also put out a narrative there. Well, the morning that happened, I had on Fox News and MSNBC, CNN, they do the same thing from the leftist perspective. No dissenting voices. It's all tribal, one area, 3 hours. You want the right-wing perspective or the left-wing perspective, no independent thinking and in between. But Fox News in particular, that young black woman, I forgot her name with the short hair on Fox and Friends, she just literally laid it out of a us versus them scenario, saying things like they hate us. Why are we pretending that they don't hate us? They hate us. Well, who is they? And she's painting this broad picture. And now she'll say, I was talking about the jihadists and the radicals, but she's painting that picture on all Muslims, on all brown people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not a black person like herself. When I say brown, Middle Eastern,
of course,
those people. And it's like the same rhetoric that happened around 9/11, which allowed us to start going in there and setting the Middle East on fire again. And it's really scary when you see that out there, fam. And they are using this no matter what. And you see this, and we look at this like, oh, more censorship's coming right now. Because then you see the videos and saying, well, this is the big tech companies that are allowing this to happen. They're allowing misinformation and hate and anti-Semitic rhetoric to be spread. So they use excuses like this, just like in the first segment we talked about, to further the security state, to take away your civil liberties, to impede on them. And at the end of the day, they have more power. You have less. They have all the resources. You have less. It just, once again, fits into the control mechanism. And it is awfully scary out there. That's why a show like the one I promoted is needed. Promoting.
Yeah, I mean, this helps no one, but I would say it helps Israel. But at the same time, it does show that if it's real, it does show that there are people there that are just desperate. So again, I still say the blame goes back to Israel. But yeah, I mean, that's why people think it's
but they have cohorts. They have pornographers, fam. They have people, all, most of them are pro-Israel. A lot of them have Israeli citizenship, dual citizenships. Yeah, too, as well. But there are a lot of people who just share that Zionist mentality, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, it goes back to, we, the West, are the lesser of two evils. Our Christian Judaic principles are what matter most. Those are the right ones. Arabs are the religion of pedophiles and all this other stuff. Forget about what's written in their books. Forget about what they're doing right now. At the end of the day, we are the lesser of two evils. Unfortunately, those people are being used as shields for Hamas. We got to get rid of Hamas, so there got to be some casualties. It's okay. Don't look at that as a genocide. With that being said, finishing up, I just want to play this last clip over here, because this is once again from the and if you could take that banner down, Jayme, please. This is once again from the Wake Up America, the pilot I put out there. We would hope that there would be some movement with the RT, right? Coming home, taking you a part of taking advantage of the relationship and getting a morning show out there. But once again, this show is about having different perspective, different ideologies, 4 co-hosts from different parts of the political spectrum, from left to right. And then we would have guests on that would be even more further left, more further right, more hardcore libertarian, whatever the case may be. We even have a truther on the show, somebody from the Whitney Webb kind of family, and Courtney Turner. But this is one of the ones we just put out there when we asked the question, should illegal migration be America's #1 issue? Because at the end of the day, fam, regardless of what's going on in Israel, and a lot of times they just try to not talk about it, this is what's being pounded on the mainstream media, especially from the right perspective. Millions are pouring in, property values are dropping, communities changing, but is illegal immigration truly the top issue facing America? Sound off in the comments. What should be America's real priority? And this is when an exchange with the right wing guy, the guy who's furthest to right, and me, the guy who's furthest left for this particular show, are having a little discussion about. Take a look at this, fam. It's up on the screen, right? Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
So many people on the right think if you fix this issue, you'll fix America.
Well, it's very costly.
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts? Wrap it on up. Final thoughts.
Look, I'm the grandson of an immigrant from Ireland. The new people have always had problems. There was the know-nothing party that existed specifically to get rid of Catholics in America, right? So anytime somebody comes into an area, especially lower middle-class areas, the immigrants aren't going into Martha's Vineyard. It's seen by the masses. Where are the masses? The masses are at the lower levels. We're living in apartment buildings. We're living in Manhattan. We're living where we're seeing this. And people are seeing they're losing their job, they're this, they're that. It's easy to point to somebody and say no. But there's also, we're not getting the doctors and engineers and physicists from these countries, right? So there's a real threat when you get people that their own country didn't want. They empty prisons, they come here. We have a right in our country.
You just said about throwing allegations out there without proof and stating them as facts.
Venezuela did it.
No, wait. The Venezuelan situation is a little bit different.
Of course it
the
is. The
Venezuelan gangsters that came here, and Donald Trump sat there and honored Juan Guaido there. And these are Carlos Vecchia people.
No, I know.
These are people who are against the Maduro government that came here that Biden allowed to come.
And that's
right.
And that's why they took over those apartment complexes in Colorado, just for peaceful protests against the Maduro.
Once again, it's a government that your boy supported. Donald Trump supported. Juan Guaido stood up. Listen, I don't want to
support everything Donald Trump does.
But he supported that government.
The
and that
people that live here have a right to feel safe in their communities. They have a right to feel like their property values are not being submarined by some foreign bureaucracy and NGOs. And do I think it should be our number one concern? No, I don't. But does that mean it shouldn't be a concern? No, it should. At the end of the day, whether we want to agree with the severity of the crime or whatever, they are trespassing. They didn't do things the right way. They need to leave. And then I'd love anybody that wants to be in America. I want you in America. Anybody that wants to work hard, I want you here. Some of the best people I know are immigrants. We're all family of immigrants. That doesn't mean you wait online. I know waiting online sucks, but that doesn't mean you get to cut to the front because, somebody 60 years ago cut the line at Six Flags and now you're the grandkid. You know what I'm saying? That's not the way this works.
Fam, I really do like what we're doing over here with this. This is like, once again, and then I had the pushback. We talked about this. One of our most viral videos is the one me ranting about why there's migration here in the first place, something we've studied, something we've looked at, something we get to go down and see and talk to the people in Latin America. You get a different perspective if you go down there. But these are the conversations that need to be had. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on what he said, you know what I'm saying? Because he's right there. We talk about immigration all the time. And there are NGOs, there are some types of UN agenda that seems to be pouring fuel on the fire. But we've gone down and we've talked to these people. We've talked to people on both sides of the aisles, conservatives and liberals and left people on the left or whatever you want to call them, left or right people in those countries. And the first thing they say more than anything is they're sick and tired of the United States government getting involved. We shouldn't be involved. It shouldn't be down there. And that could be one of the main causes of migration, and which I believe, you know what I'm saying, is why people are coming here in the first place. So your thoughts when you heard Gerard say all those things, I mean, he was like, I'm a son of an immigrant. And this is something I don't understand. Our Italian immigrants came here. Everybody saw The Godfather. Vito Corleone went through the Statue of Liberty. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, bring them in, get them in, go. Let's go. I mean, immigration has always existed in this country. Your thoughts on that, your final thoughts, and we'll wrap up the show.
Yeah. So I got to go, but I just think he's extremely misinformed. And I think there's like a fear on these people where they think like they're being replaced, that someone else is out to get them. And it's all perpetuated by fake media, like fake reports and that sort of thing. And he's citing things without evidence. And he's generalizing a big group of people. And it's ironic because the thing is, he says Irish immigrant, Italian immigrant. There was a legal process to allow immigrants in. That process is no longer feasible for a lot of people. That's why we have illegal immigration, because the legal process takes like way too long for people to come in. There could be an easier way to screen people in and do that. But what they want is cheap labor, and they want to continue this manipulation of both sides of the aisle with this immigration issue. So that's why it's there. And so, anyway, I got to get going, guys.
Today. Thank you for watching the TruthWire. He's got the gym. I got the beach. Jamie's got a barbecue. We love you. Thank you. All the ways to help us are down below. We'll see you soon. Remember to hang out. Enjoy us Wednesday on WBAI, 4 p.m. Eastern on Drive Time. That's it. Truth out, fam.
Sounds good. Bye. I'm not